Welcome to the latest episode of Interesting Indies, where I tell you about an indie game I think you should play and why you should play it. As you can see by the title of this video, today we're talking about the sequel to 2013's Rogue Legacy made by Cellar Door Games. But before we do, I feel like it's important to briefly discuss the original game and the history of the studio that made it. The first game the studio ever made, and as it turns out my first experience with the studio, although I didn't know it at the time, was actually on Newgrounds in around 2010 when they posted a game called Don't Shit Your Pants, which was a straightforward text adventure game where you try not to shit your pants. I was around 13 years old at the time and I don't remember really liking it that much. I could have sworn I wrote a particularly nasty review at the time, but when I dug up my old Newgrounds account to look for it, I didn't see it among the reviews I had left. If it did exist and I haven't gone completely crazy, it was most likely deleted by a moderator, which was probably a good thing, if it's as bad as I remember it being. Although I wasn't consciously aware that I was playing more of their releases, I also played several of their later Newgrounds games like My First Quantum Translocator, I Have One Day, and Villainous Tower Attack. I remember each of those as being fun distractions when I should have been doing homework or working on something in school. Sorry, Mom and Dad, about that one. To my teachers, not so sorry, your classes were pretty boring. I could honestly make an entire video about Newgrounds and what a significant role it played in both my childhood and the, I'd say, late 2000s to early 2010s internet. Let me know if that's something you'd like to see in the comments. After I got off Newgrounds though, because I had to start thinking about my future and become a functioning adult, I didn't really interact with Cellar Door Games' games for a while. Rogue Legacy 1 came out in 2013, but I didn't actually play it until 2016, and hadn't finished it until I went back to do research and capture footage for this review. Despite being late to the party on it though, I feel like I can say with confidence that Rogue Legacy 1 is a textbook example of how to do a great roguelite game. Roguelite here is not to be confused with roguelike. Although I like both genres, I think it's worth going over the difference between the two here so you know what you're getting into. A roguelike is a game that has permadeath and no carryover between runs through the game. Whereas a roguelite is the same, it has the death between runs through the game, but you can get permanent upgrades that carry through to the next run, getting stronger over time. There's really a much more nuanced discussion you could have about the difference between roguelikes and roguelites, but conveniently, Game Maker's Toolkit already made a video talking about that, so I'll throw a card on the screen here and a link in the description for you to check that out, because it probably explains the nuance better than I ever could, and it's a really helpful introduction to the genre if you're really interested in going deep with this. But back to what makes this a good roguelite game. Every run feels significant, and I never felt like I was not making progress when I was playing the game. And there's plenty of other technical things that I liked about the game, but I think instead what I'd like to also point out here is the rooms that have little portraits of the different games the devs made over the years. I like when developers throw in neat little celebrations of their history, and it's how I made the connection to those old Newgrounds games I played, and how I decided to go back to those games to include them in this review. But we're not just here to sing the praises of Rogue Legacy 1. As you can see by the title of this review, we finally get to talk about Rogue Legacy 2 now. So why did I make you sit through almost 4 minutes of preamble before we even got to the game that this review is about? First of all, because it was fun to explore my personal connection with the developer's older games, and I thought it would be fun to share that with everyone. But also because I think you can really see, if you play through all those old games, where they started to kind of pick and pull ideas from to turn Rogue Legacy 1 into the game that it was, and also to see then how Rogue Legacy 2 takes all those concepts that were built into Rogue Legacy 1 and refines them so much more. Rogue Legacy 2 was released into early access on Steam in August of 2020. Admittedly, the game barely has more content than a demo at the time of recording, but I still think it's worth your money because of all the promise it's showing just on what it has right now. At time of recording, the game has one biome, with a sneak preview at 2 of the future biomes. But the stuff they have in that one biome is pretty impressive. I got almost 8 hours of playtime just out of what they have in the game right now. So let's dive a little deeper and start going into all the mechanical changes that I think make this game so special. The castle upgrade system, first introduced in Villainous Tower Attack and used again in Rogue Legacy 1, is back again in this game. The thing they did to improve it though is now there's a labor cost associated with taking new tiles on the castle after your first few. So now it's not just about mindlessly buying every upgrade on the tree to unlock the whole thing, you also have to think about what the best upgrade you can get for now is and how the labor costs will go up on more expensive items later. The 3 first classes of Rogue Legacy 1 are also back, but they all have new balance tweaks to make them more interesting in my opinion. In Rogue Legacy 1, I rarely chose to use the Paladin after I unlocked the more advanced classes because I felt like their shield ability, while useful for blocking some projectiles, was only really useful against bosses and not in the main rooms of the castle. They resolved this by adding a counterattack to the shield, so now not only does it block the damage but it actually damages your enemies, which makes it much more useful for helping to clear out rooms of enemies now. The Barbarian is also back, and now there are a lot more changes to them that I feel balance them much better. For starters, their shout ability, in addition to destroying all projectiles on screen like it used to, does a little bit of damage and freezes enemies on screen, which can be really helpful when there's a really big crowd of enemies you have to deal with. They also got a bit of a nerf in that their air attack is now a spinning attack that does a lot less damage than their ground strike, but can hit multiple times if timed correctly. Some people in the forums on Steam were complaining about this attack, but I actually like it. It makes them distinct from the Paladin, in that you're gonna want to be focusing more on ground combat with them, instead of what they were in Rogue Legacy 1, which was basically an all-around better version of the Paladin just with no shield. The Mage is the final returning class currently in the game, and I think it has the most improvements by far. I avoided using the Mage whenever possible in Rogue Legacy 1 because they lacked so much survivability. And unlike all the later spell-based classes you unlocked in Rogue Legacy 1, the Mage didn't really have any effective damage that didn't cost mana. They fixed the mana problem by not only making it so that every class gets a small amount of mana back whenever they hit an enemy, but also that the Mage gets a much more substantial amount of mana back than the other classes. This makes fighting with magic in regular rooms much less of a concern than I feel it was in Rogue Legacy 1. But the other great improvement for the Mage is that their melee attack now has a little bit of range and an explosion at the end of it, which makes it able to fight from a much safer distance. It also helps that there's a lot more good combat-focused spells in Rogue Legacy 2 than in Rogue Legacy 1. And those are just the 3 returning classes that have made improvements. There's also a 4th new class added just for this game. This new class is called the Ranger, and it focuses on using a bow and arrow to do non-magical range damage. This class is admittedly a little rougher around the edges than the established 3, but I think it still has some really interesting things going for it. I didn't find its class ability to create platforms especially useful in any of my runs, but I feel like if they added more challenging platforming sections to the randomly generated room pool, then that platform could be especially helpful for preventing taking damage. What the Ranger does have going for them right now though are they can do really good damage from a far away distance, and they can pogo off enemies by using their bow in the air. There's only one boss fight in the game right now, but it's a really good and challenging boss fight, especially for the first area of the game. And it's a great introduction to the way they've changed introducing boss fights from the last game. In Rogue Legacy 1, all you had to do was walk up to the boss door and go in, but in this game you actually have to figure out how to open the boss door with a small puzzle. And the way you find out the solution to the puzzle is by reading memories, little floating purple ghosts that appear on the map now. But you can't just read them right away, you need to pick up a new type of item called an heirloom that lets you read them. There are 2 heirlooms in the game right now, the one that lets you read the memories, and another one which gives you the dash ability, replacing the dash runes from the previous game. When you discover an heirloom, you don't just get it right away. You have to complete a series of challenges that test your skills at the game and also double as a tutorial for how to use the item. I like this system because it makes getting new movement upgrades and gameplay options more rewarding, and it allows the devs to introduce more complex mechanics over time rather than overwhelming the player at the start. My only complaint is I wish I didn't quite need the memory item to open the boss doors, because I got to the boss door well before I ever discovered that item, and I was really frustrated that I couldn't move forward on my own. I think there should still be some way of figuring out the puzzle to the boss door without the memory item, but have the memory item be sort of like a hint system or a way to shortcut some kind of other puzzle you need to do to get the solution. Overall though, I think what they have in the game so far is really fun, and I hope they keep adding more in the future. At time of recording, there's a patch coming out in a little under 2 weeks. It's probably going live around the same time as this video, and I'll be excited to see what new challenges they add in the second biome, and maybe other items or upgrades to the castle, stuff like that. Once I've had the chance to play the update and organize my thoughts on it, I'll leave a pinned comment down below that explains what I think about it. Given how early it is in development, I can't promise it's going to run particularly well on your computer or that you're not going to encounter a fair amount of bugs. I know I did. But I think those will get smoothed out with updates over time, and it still does run on my low-end computer, so that's something. Plus, there's a useful bug reporting tool built into the game, and the devs are super responsive on their Steam forums and in their Discord group, not to mention how helpful the community in general is around the game. I actually couldn't make it past the first boss because of a bug involving speeding up the boss intro, and someone on the Discord group knew how to get around it and just told me, so I didn't have to wait for a fix. Overall, this game is shaping up to be an excellent successor to Rogue Legacy 1, and I think you should pick it up even if it's currently a little unpolished in places. Hey, thank you for watching my video. If you like what I do, there should be another video along the side of my face here that you should click and go watch. And if you like the sound of my voice, I stream every Monday and Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Time. Come hang out and watch those. I post videos here every month, the third Tuesday of every month. So check back in about a month and there'll be a new video. Talk to you guys next time.